Hello guys, welcome to Cinema Ultimate. In this video, I will show you an action movie, Spider-Man Far From Home, 2019. The film is directed by Jon Watts and stars Tom Holland as Peter Parker. This film tells about the life of Peter Parker after losing his mentor, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. Peter realized that he could not be the superhero fully because he still had to continue his studies at the School of Science and Midtown Technology. Therefore, he did not want to be a Spider-Man during a study tour to Europe for 2 weeks. However, the event did not go according to plan because of the arrival of Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson. Nick introduced Peter to Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, to work together to handle the elementals. What's next? Here's a recap of the film Spider-Man Far From Home, 2019. At the beginning of the film, a scene in a Mexico City is seen in a ruined state. Nick Fury and Maria Hill came to investigate. Moments later, they were attacked by Earth Elemental, which turned out to be the cause of the city's destruction. Suddenly a man wearing a hero costume named Quentin Beck arrives. He had come to help them fight the elemental. The scene switches to the Midtown School of Science and Technology, where Betty Brant and Jason are seen broadcasting the daily school news. At that time, the information opened with the topic of In Memoriam Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and Vision, who had died in the previous battle. Then Betty explains an incident of the blip, the event of the return of people who were lost due to Thanos snapping his fingers. In the afternoon, Peter Parker talked to the net about his plans to approach Michelle Jones, aka MJ. At that time, their school was planning a study tour to Europe. In the evening, Peter is seen attending a fundraising event as Spider-Man with Aunt May. And then Happy Hogan came and looked like he was approaching Aunt May. Happy tells Peter that Nick Fury is looking for him, but Peter ignores him. Peter instead continued talking to the reporters. Not long after, several reporters asked Peter questions about the new Iron Man figure or the leader of the Avengers. This made Peter uncomfortable, and he decided to go outside to calm himself down. The next day Peter was getting ready to leave for his study tour to Europe. Without thinking, Peter chose to leave his Spider-Man costume. Then he and his study tour group got ready to go to Europe. They were accompanied by Mr. Harrington and Mr. Julius Dell, their homeroom teacher and assistant teacher, during the study tour. Peter asks Ned to help him switch seats with MJ on the plane. Ned agreed, but his attempt failed because Mr. Harrington was sitting next to Peter instead. Meanwhile, MJ sat next to Brad Davis, who also had feelings for MJ. This annoyed Peter. Long story short, they arrived in Venice, Italy. However, Peter suddenly sees his costume already in his suitcase at the airport. It turned out that May's aunt had put the costume in her suitcase. Then they entered a hotel that looked less than decent. Even so, they still enjoy the scenery there. Peter himself started trying to get close to MJ while outside. However, the water surface suddenly rose upwards to form a water elemental. The elemental started attacking the city and destroying the buildings there. Then Peter tried to do something to prevent it. However, he remembered that his Spider-Man costume was at the hotel. So he quietly tried to fight the elemental there. It wasn't long before Beck arrived with his powers to fight the elemental. He subdued the elemental's attack and split it in two. After the incident, Peter's classmates saw Beck as a hero. Plus, they saw the news about Beck's figure. So they started calling him Mysterio. Then Peter and Ned returned to their room. It turned out that there was already Nick Fury waiting for Peter. Nick immediately shoots drugs at Ned because he doesn't want Ned to hear their conversation. Nick deliberately sneaked into Peter's room because he had contacted Peter many times but was always ignored. Then Nick takes Peter to his secret hideout to meet up with Maria and Beck. There, Beck tells Peter that he is from an alternate Earth. And that's where the elementals came from. According to him, this was caused by the blip. Beck tells Peter that the fire elemental has destroyed his homeworld and family. Nick needs Peter's help in fighting the elementals. But Peter felt that he was not the Avengers qualified to fight such a giant creature. And then Peter refused and chose to go to enjoy the tour. On the way home, Nick gives Tony Stark's Edith glasses to Peter. The next day Nick hijacks Peter's study tour schedule. He orders his subordinate, Dimitri, to disguise himself as the driver of his new destination, Prague. Nick and Beck already know that's where the fire elemental will strike. Before leaving, Peter was pulled by a woman who was a subordinate of Fury to give him a black costume. The woman asked Peter to take off his clothes and immediately put on his new costume. Then suddenly, Brad appeared while looking for the toilet. He immediately took a photo of Peter in a position that looked like a pervert. There was a misunderstanding. Peter tried to chase after him to delete the image quickly. On the way, Peter finds a high-tech glasses belonging to Tony Stark named Edith. And then Peter put it on. Peter messaged Edith to help him trick Brad. However, his request was misinterpreted. Edith instead sends the signal for a killer drone to attack Brad. The drone came from behind their bus and locked onto its target, putting the bus in danger. Peter quickly tried to stop the drone attack. Then he hacks into Brad's phone and deletes his photo. Arriving in Prague, Mr. Harrington told the students that their next activity was to watch the opera, which meant that their plans for the carnival were cancelled. Unbeknownst to them, that was also Nick's plan so they wouldn't be trapped in the fire elemental path. On opera night, Peter plans to sit next to MJ. However, he suddenly had to leave because he was about to face an attack by the fire elemental at the carnival. Spider-Man, who saw it, immediately tried to save them. Spider-Man fired his gun at the fire elemental. And apparently, it caused an object to fall near MJ, who watched their fight. While on the other hand, Ned and Betty are stuck in the pinwheel game. Then Spider-Man and Mysterio team up against the elemental. Mysterio advises Peter to immediately prevent the elemental from touching the metal because it will make it stronger. Then Mysterio used his powers to perform heroic actions by entering the body of the fire elementals. Instantly the elemental was blown to pieces. Peter, who saw it, immediately approached Beck to confirm Beck's condition. Then Nick came and scolded Peter because Peter was considered not to do what he asked. And he went from there. After the incident, Peter spoke to Beck at a bar. They said so closely that Peter was blown away by Beck. He lent Beck his Edith glasses. And Beck immediately put the glasses on. Then Peter thought that Beck was the one who deserved to replace Iron Man. According to him, Tony will also let him choose who is worthy of replacing the leader of the Avengers. And then Peter gave Beck his Edith glasses and left. After Peter leaves, Beck dispels what has been his game of illusion. It was all just an illusion to steal Tony Stark's glasses. Everyone there instantly turned into workers who turned out to be working for Beck. They were all former employees of Stark Industry who felt that the company had let them down. They think Tony has stolen their job idea. It turns out that they did have a grudge when they were employees of Tony Stark. They are upset about what happened to them in the past. They are just biding their time to commit their crimes. Beck had it all planned from the start. He started with fake elementals to show themselves as heroes, then several drones to create destruction there. They looked happy with the win. The scene switches when Peter is back at the hotel. Then he plans to invite MJ to go with him that night. Peter tries to tell MJ about his feelings for her. However, MJ interrupts his conversation and reveals that she knows Peter is Spider-Man. Peter was surprised to hear that. MJ feels a lot of coincidence involving them being in the same place and simultaneously. And then MJ took out an object he found during the battle against the fire elementals. It turned out to be a projector showing the scene of Mysterio fighting the air elemental. They both realized that Beck was behind the elementals. They concluded that Beck had been manipulating all of their fights all along. On the other hand, Beck and his men were preparing a much bigger air elemental attack. It wasn't long before Beck's men informed Beck that one of his projectors was missing. Beck looked very annoyed and then looked to find out where the projector was. And then they saw that the projector was already in Peter's hands. Meanwhile, Peter rushes off to see Nick and Maria about what really happened. Unbeknownst to him, Beck had prepared many illusions to trap him. First, he affects Peter's mind with the figure of Iron Man rising from his grave and then attacking Peter's mind. After that, Nick's figure appears from a distance, asking Peter who knows about Mysterio. Peter admits he told MJ, Ned, and Ned probably told Betty. But it turns out he's not Nick Fury. He is Beck. Again Peter was deceived by him. Beck plans to kill Peter and his friends. He puts Peter on the railroad tracks to finish him off. However, it turned out that Peter was still able to save himself with wounds all over his body. And then he passed out on the train. When Peter woke up, he was shocked because he was already in a Dutch prison. Then he hurried away from there. Before long, he borrowed a cell phone from someone else. He tried to contact Happy Hogan to pick him up there. Then Happy arrived on his jet. Happy bandages Peter's wounds on his body. Peter looks sad and says he doesn't understand why Tony chose Peter as his successor. But Happy tries to convince Peter that Tony believes in him for a reason. And Tony was sure Peter would be the hero he needed. Hearing this, Peter got up and rushed to save his friends. He designed his new costume from Tony's computer before they arrived in London. On the other hand, the study tour group boarded a tour bus around London. However, their bus was driven by one of Beck's men at that time. They stop in London when Mysterio sends out an air elemental attack. They ran for cover from the air elemental attacks, and then Spider-Man arrived in his new costume. He tries to stop the projector from tricking them. Finally, Spider-Man managed to get into the water elemental core and stop it. Meanwhile, Happy goes outside looking for Ned, MJ, Betty, and Flash. However, the jet exploded. They immediately hid in an old tower in London. As the drone chases them, they run into the room. They tried to destroy it, and they ran back to a room with an armored door to hide. Outside, Spider-Man is trying to defeat Mysterio with the drones he sent. He enters the illusion of the air elemental and unites all the drones to collide with each other and destroy the illusion. Using his spider web weapon, he dodged the many drones following him and beat them. Then in the chaos, one of the drones fired at Mysterio. Peter went over to him to get his Edith glasses. Beck, who saw it, was not just silent. He tries to trick Peter back with one last illusion to kill him. However, unexpectedly, all his plans failed because Peter was more brilliant. He was able to overcome the illusion trick created by Mysterio because he had learned from the previous trick. So he tries hard to stop the drones until finally, the drone attacked Beck. And Beck died instantly. Then Peter deactivates the rest of the drones. Peter and MJ run towards the bridge to meet each other. The chaos ended. Long story short, the study tour group returned from there. After that incident, Peter was seen interrogating Happy and May to confirm their relationship so far. In the post-credits scene, Peter goes to meet MJ to be seen as Spider-Man. He took MJ around the city. However, it wasn't long before they heard the news broadcast in the middle of the town. It turns out that Beck had recorded a video before his death and sent it to the Daily Bugle. Beck makes a fabricated video that makes people think that Spider-Man orchestrated the drone attack in London. Beck later announced that Spider-Man was Peter Parker. At the end of the credit scene, Nick Fury contacts his men and asks for updated information about what just happened. And the movie is over. Okay guys. If you like our channel, support us with subscribe and turn on the bell, like, comment, and share. So that you don't miss our next video and our channel can grow even more. See you guys.